we've got a really great panel here today. It's nice and diverse, and what I like is we also have some representation right now on the brand side with Harry from Unilever. We've got Susan, and I'm not going to pronounce your last name because I'm American and I would just make a mess of it, so I apologize. But Susan is with Fox and also works on some of the Disney projects and other things that are starting to come through here in the Netherlands. We've got Adam Davies, who works on Synamedia as a product manager. He's been working on some of the projects such as some of the things that Jamie's been talking about, Sky Media and AdSmart. And we have Chris Pizzurro, who is the VP Global Sales over at Canoe. And Canoe is a very large, I think you guys are doing 6 billion addressable ad impressions across the 3 major cable companies in the United States per quarter, which is pretty meaningful scale when it comes to talking about addressable. So I think one of the things I want to do to set the stage really is to get this out of the way very quickly, because I think what happens in any addressable TV discussion really starts to get bogged down in the nuances of the individualized technology. And I don't want to do that for this discussion. So I'm going to put this up to the panelists if anybody disagrees, but okay, we're looking at here, obviously, OTA, over-the-air and free-to-air has some limitations, but if you're talking about HbbTV, if you're talking about IPTV, if you're talking about any sort of the proprietary addressable solutions, and if you're talking about OTT, in broadcaster quality, production level, live linear VOD context, does it matter what the delivery method is when you think about addressable TV? I'll open that up to the panel.
Yeah, you look at me, so if you allow me to kick off. Mm-hmm. Thanks for the invitation, great to be here. As we talked about before, we talk a lot about technology, and don't take me wrong, it's absolutely vital, but for me it's just an enabler and a means to an end. So when we talk about addressable, also addressable is just a way to establish more relevance for consumers. The biggest challenge for us as a leading advertiser, fast-moving consumer goods, is we are well aware that one-size-fits-all is over. Don't expect us to step into laser or micro targeting, but we're rolling out a whole model of precision marketing, which is a word I dislike a little bit, but it's about moving from one-size-fits-all to a more diversified approach. And for that, you need data and technology to do the job. And my biggest headache, I would say, my biggest pain, is we spend so much time, and too much time, and money, and resource on the tech part and getting everything integrated and together. So from a consumer perspective, for us it's simply about servicing consumers who are after relevant information, inspiration, communication, whatever, anytime, anywhere, any device, and that is something we need to enable as an industry.
Great. Does anybody on the panel have anything they want to add to?
Yeah, so as a tech provider, I don't think you can spend too much money on the tech, actually. It matters to us, because that's what we do, but it shouldn't matter to anybody else. That's what our side of the industry has to be able to do, is make the whole process frictionless for the brands, certainly, for the broadcasters and for the service providers, and then to bring in consistent measurement. That's our job. That's what this side of the market, that's what the 2,000 stands just north of here are here to do. So it is important. It's important to understand the differences, but we have to make sure that we can make that a simple and easy process so the rest of the market can just get on doing what they should be doing, which is delivering a better TV experience.
So part of it is really delivering the scale, right? So kind of getting it in, making it normalized, and getting the data and getting it to scale.
I mean, the way you get to the scale is, like we said, it's multiple tech partners, and that should be transparent to you. And that's what we spend a lot of our time on, and how we get to the big number is by the connections between the various technologies, because that's where things can fall down. It's within the seams. So that's where we spend a lot of our time, is you can get the scale together, but to do quality assurance over the scale and to make sure nothing's falling on the floor. As we sort of had a big broadcast TV business, now we're moving to an on-demand TV business. We find a lot of the keys to success is to make sure that you're figuring out where stuff's falling on the floor.
Makes sense. And I think, Susan, you had made a point when we were talking, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but you had made a point overall that video in general is growing, right? So if you're thinking about it from, you're combining the BVOD, you're combining the SVOD, you're combining the AVOD, you're combining the linear TV, when you throw all of this together, ultimately video is very powerful and it is on the rise. It just looks different, right?
Yeah, I think to go back to your first question, does it matter? I think it depends on what department I'm talking to, because every distribution matter has its own challenges. So television, I think the measurement is the challenge. If you look at Fox Sports Go, which is actually like Hulu, you have a paid subscription and an ad-funded subscription, and we bring it also OTT. So, and then we have Disney Plus, which is now the new service in the market, and we have all our online channels. I think every methodology has its own challenge, in particular for my neighbor on the right-hand side, if you want to combine all advertisement. And on the left-hand side, I think the technology, unluckily, is different on every platform. And I have different partners. So in total, video viewing is growing, which is great. But it makes it much more challenging than our regular business 10 years ago, when we only had to focus on one video screen and one methodology. So it's now more a matrix where we need to look at and push buttons on what to do to get the right advertising experience, but also consumer experience.
No, I think that's great. I mean, this kind of sets you up, Harry. You've got these people on stage. They're incredibly talented. They all work in different areas. They work on technology. They work on the delivery of the content. They work on, as a brand, what is it that you need? What is the problem that you need them to come together and solve? What is it that you, as Unilever, are looking for?
Yeah, my major plea would be, I hear what my dear panelists are saying, but many of them are optimizing within their own silo or in their own system. And basically what we are looking for is seamless integration from a consumer perspective, which doesn't need to know or be bothered by the fact that there are so many suppliers in the market. And I know it's a tough call because everything is fragmenting. So also in the world of tech, there's fragmentation. And I can't expect tech providers to drop that technology and say, let's move to an industry standard. But the reality is, we spend so much time and money and we feel the pain from disconnect, that would, for me, the biggest unlock. To get to standards, to get more harmonized technology, and please avoid, we complain a lot about global digital players who have created the walled gardens. For me, it feels that we are creating walled gardens in the world of tech, and we're creating walled gardens within media agencies. We see national broadcasters who feel challenged by the global players, which I do understand, and in response try to create their own walled gardens. Creating more walled gardens is not bringing us the solution. And my biggest concern is, and we had a quick chat on that, when I hear all these reflections and presentations, I don't believe we significantly disagree on whether it's the blue or red pill, but we don't disagree on what needs to be done. My main concern is, time is not our friend. Do we realize that we need to speed up? Because whilst we are discussing all of this, the world moves on, and especially global digital players are moving on. And our reach out to local business partners is, we want to work with you, because we don't love a world dominated by a handful of global tech players. We strongly believe that local broadcasters, publishers can bring the magic, because they are so much closer to the world we live in. It's the beauty of a globalization. We also learn to value the value of local insights. So we strongly believe in a model with global players who will supply a lot of the mass and scale and whatever. And we are hoping local partners to bring the magic. And then we want to create the best of those both worlds.
Susan, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
I work at Disney, so I like to bring magic, but
Yeah.
no, I think the difficulty is that the Netherlands is small.
Right.
So I think that is not in our advance. If you look at what Sky is doing, which used to be a sister company, I think the technology can easily be brought to the Netherlands, and it takes, I think, 4 players to work together. It's KPN, it's Ziggo, because it's not in the hands of, I think, the broadcasters to not be willing to share the data, but I think there is where the data is. And I think also Ziggo, as much as they would like to be, they're not the first priority of Telenet and Liberty Global. Otherwise, I think the technology would be here. Then the question is, I think also Jimmy from Sky said, you need to be brave to work together. I think with the Brandelli, Fox channels and Discovery and Viacom, we proved that it's possible to work together, but it took us also a year to bring the partnership together. So the urgency is not yet there, but keep banging on the door because it is necessary. But you also know it from the supermarket. I don't know if you have Jumbo and Albert Heijn sharing the data to get your consumer insights. So it is not only in this industry very difficult to bring the consumer data from competitors together, also in a supermarket where there's heavily competition. I think it's very difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I think the data is a big piece of this, right? So, I mean, there is a lot of talk. I think when you do have, I mean, there's some excellent examples. I mean, Jamie, you blew me away when you said you had 4,500 different segments or ad targeting segments there in the Sky AdSmart platform. I mean, I think that's incredibly impressive. I think one of the questions comes down to, does it tend to be, advertisers looking for their data, or does it tend to be the data that can be derived from the telcos? Of course, how's that? I mean, I'd like to kind of turn to Chris and Adam here for a second, because they work on the technology side. I mean, maybe Chris, on your side, like I said, you serve 6 billion ad impressions, basically a quarter in addressable TV in the United States across Comcast, Cox, and Charter, which again is a collaboration of competitors that are out there. So the idea that bringing together for scale is important. What are kind of the data that you see primarily being activated in your marketplace? Is it tend to be more your own derived data, or does it tend to be more the data that customers are bringing into that equation?
First thing is it is try and always go back to what the brand's goals are in the first place, right? So there's that's always first and foremost. But it does go back to kind of what you said, and was Harry, you mentioned it, of when someone says standards, I think people kind of run for the hills, right? Oh my God, this is going to take 5 years. We've got to sit in a room and all that sort of stuff. Where I think we've had our best practices and our success is to talk about what are features and functionalities of commonality across the platforms. The same thing, but the language is a little different, right? It says it's features and functionalities that are common across the platform that are achieving your goals, as opposed to just some broad standards. So for instance, in VOD in the US, where we've managed to get a common features and functionalities to deliver those 6 billion impressions on a quarterly basis, which has made a $1 billion market in the US, it is solely on a viewed ad impression. We kept it very, very simple and just said, how can we get features and functionalities that are common across platforms and across vendors, and just do it on a viewed ad impression. And that's how we've got a whole bunch of money to shift. So that's great because that reaches on the scale of TV. Then when it comes to, okay, I want to add addressable onto that. Okay, well maybe that is, let me add in the light viewer data, or let me add in the higher income or presence of kids, right? So then, that data kind of comes in. So we've managed to get the tech vendors and across Comcast, Cox, and Charter in terms of the distributors together, because we're saying, let's not worry about broad standards. Let's just come together and figure out what we need to do for vast reach, and then what we need to do for just specific audience segments that come in. So the answer is on the data side, it's a mix, but we've always tried to make it on the mix of what's valuable back to Unilever and the brands.
Makes sense. And then, and Adam, you said on your side, we've kind of spoken briefly that, and you've been you've been doing some interesting projects, particularly in Northern Europe around addressable TV. One of the things that you said to me, which kind of caught my eye or caught my ear, was that the tech is easier, right? Than that's something that can be solved relatively quickly, right? It's more of kind of the commercial relationships and getting people together to get the movement against it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. As I tell my engineers, it's just code, and it's there's quite a lot of code though, to be fair.
Every time I say that to my engineers, they say, "Don't say that."
It's the tech is easier. The tech is achievable. I think that's what we're driving at is, and if the tech is achievable, that's when we can deliver the value to Harry. And that's when we can deliver things like consistency and simplifying the process. Because if you don't, you end up with a whole bunch of silos. And when you've got silos, a couple of things happen. One, your cost goes up because you have to start running multiple teams. And that makes it inefficient to start offering a reasonable CPM. So there's a direct link through into what we can offer Harry if we get it wrong. And quality drops as well. You start, your capping goes all over the place. Your storytelling starts disappearing because the user's going across multiple platforms. So when we get the tech right, it makes the process simpler. And when you simplify the process, actually it makes it affordable and achievable for everybody to start providing addressability. So if you get it wrong, it just starts getting messy. And I think those commercial relationships that need to be in place, we become the fourth leg of the stool between the brand, the broadcaster, and the service provider, with the glue that's pulling those three together to make sure that they can talk to each other.
I mean, you bring up a great point, right? But one of the points that to kind of talk about, and particularly think about it in the Netherlands, we think about it in Europe in general, we see kind of varying levels of partnerships. I mean, there have been some great partnerships. The idea of SBS working with both Proximus and Telenet on kind of a universal product is great. Sky Virgin coming together is great. There's interesting initiatives that have been underway in Germany across multiple media. I think, here in the Netherlands, is there really an appetite, I think, for everybody to work together to enable these types of systems and in order to get to the scale? Because does any one of the systems individually deliver the scale that is needed? Right?
I'm interested in your view on this, yeah.
No, I think in partnership, again, I already mentioned Brandelli and now the partnership with RTL. So I think, do we believe in partnership? Absolutely. Do we need an affiliate to join the party? Absolutely. And then I think you get scale. And also you get the data right. But still keep in mind, you mentioned just briefly price. Keep in mind that people want targeting and, again, optimizing what the price is. Because I'm not going to ask you the numbers on how many people use Sky AdSmart or on SBS side. How much of your total spend is being used on just mass media versus targeted, also on YouTube, because we keep calling them tech parties, which is difficult because even 24 Kitchen, if I look at my channel, 24 Kitchen, it's a tech game nowadays. I think it's on the price. We just launched Fox Sports Go Dynamic Ad Insertion. Don't ask me the price, what it costs to invest, and don't ask me what I need to negotiate on what kind of CPM I'm getting in return for that. So I'm not going to ask you the question if you're willing to pay, but I think the CPM for TV versus the CPM for the digital landscape, I think, is also something that is in the way of getting platforms to work together and, let's say, dividing the money or taking the risk on the difference between the CPM in the digital landscape and the GRP calculated to a TV CPM. And I think that is the reason why it's difficult. If it was one price point, one technology, it would be fairly simple because we work very good and effective with RTL and we see many benefits of doing that. And this is not the end, it's the beginning. But it's difficult.
This is going to...
You want me to respond? Yeah, on pricing. Basically, the three currencies we use, we talk about volume, value, and price. First of all, what you see now, reality in this market is linear TV consumption is dropping, and the number of eyeballs many of you can sell to advertisers is dropping as well. So the market response, so prices are going up. So the first thing, of the best thing that could happen to all of us, is that you would be able to create more eyeballs. And I'm not suggesting double the number of spots in a commercial break, but create more volume. Then price is, for me, I'm not naive. I see broadcasters in this market experimenting with auction-based commercial models. That's all fine. We can disagree on the way it's being done, but if we move into a world of more auction-based selling video inventory, that's fine as well. That will be the opportunity for advertisers and agencies to create a new way to compete, which is using insights, technology, and data to outsmart others. Because in the end, volume is not the way that will create a competitive advantage. For me, it's very much about the scale part, because yes, it's great that some broadcasters create alliances, but it's still small. And our plea is, when you talk about measurement, my global head of media announced early this year a coalition of cross-media measurement, bringing Facebook, Google, Twitter, and major local US broadcasters together in creating an integrated, seamless way of measurement. And we were at the start, and we initiated this alliance, but then we handed it over to the WFA, because we don't believe this is something a single player in the market can do. But this asks for leadership, and that's why I'm so interested what's happening with ITV. For me, it feels like there's visions, leadership, and you have found a way to make it happen. In this market, we have a lifetime opportunity. As many of you know, we have a tender. There is an RFP, went out already a year ago, and there are now proposals on creating a cross-media measurement ecosystem. And that is indeed, I repeat, a lifetime opportunity, because that's the opportunity for us to change the rules of the game. But it's frightening as well, because it's a journey into the unknown. And that's what I'm hoping for leadership to step in and not be in denial, and be aware that time is not our friend, because we're running out of time.
So I would ask kind of two follow-up questions on that, and then I want to move on to a couple other questions. But the first, I think, is to Susan's point, which is, are you willing to pay more for the addressability and the audience targeting and the things that you need to get? I know you've mentioned you're shifting around the way that you're doing your linear spend, for example, here in the Netherlands, and so are you willing to kind of get behind that and really push against that and accept that those could be higher rates to get to the audiences that you may be getting to?
Yeah, this will be used against me, I'm quite sure. But for us, it's really a price-value game. We don't mind to pay more for everything that drives our brands and business harder. Let's be honest, there's a lot of waste in the system. So everything that can help all of us to get waste out. And the biggest thing to unlock all of this is relevance. Let's be honest. I mean, we create, from a consumer perspective, we create a lot of noise. I mean, bothering people with commercial messages they don't ask for. And I see a sort of revival in our own communication planning of good old cinema, where we believe that the quality of the contact is so much more powerful as we thought it was. And of course, in terms of cost per view or fully view, it's much, much, much more expensive. But I believe advertisers are open for that price-value equation. So, but then you get into the challenge how to measure it. Yeah.
So I think what we just got you to say on stage is you're willing to pay a little bit more, which is good, and that should hopefully make some people
Don't forget the value part. Yeah.
But you've got to get the value, right? So the idea that there is a return on ad spend, so maybe you're hitting your audience better. Maybe that has some impact in some ad loads and other things that we can get into. I would kind of to keep this moving on. So there's a willingness to collaborate. There is a willingness to do deals together, potentially a willingness to reevaluate the way that pricing is delivered in terms of the value equation to the brand. Then I would kind of challenge both Chris and Adam. What could be holding up, I think, the implementation of this? Obviously, there's different systems working together, but really, from a technical and side, what are you seeing that's holding us back? And I'll maybe give that over to Adam.
I'll start. There's, as we've talked about, this afternoon, there are challenges about getting competitive organisations to work together. We see that commercially, and that is going to be something that the industry has to deal with technically. But that's what's happening in the market, and as much as we drive what happens, we also have to reflect those changes as well. Standards are a great place to start, but standards are foundational, and standards don't stop. Standards develop, and they only develop because somebody somewhere is going to start taking them forward and start changing the way that the market engages. And we've certainly seen that with addressability. I was actually there 7 years ago when Jamie launched AdSmart, and it was in a room smaller than this. So we're seeing the growth in the market. We're seeing the increase in the number of players coming in. And so standards become increasingly important because it's the only way that you guys can ensure consistency and seamlessly and that kind of frictionless experience. But then we have to work with our partners to be more innovative. And I think that's the key word. It's seeing not just our customers as partners, but the organisations that sometimes we would have seen as overlapping as true partners as well. And that's the challenge for us as vendors. And again, back to the 2,000 stands just north of here, to make sure that we see the value in what we can bring. And having heard Harry being prepared to spend more money, the goal is there.
Sorry,
where I think so to the challenges, and I think what we've, again, broken through in VOD in the States, and our little microcosm, right? We're not saying the whole world operates this way, but like the challenges that were there, we think the challenges are universal. And being first, it's on the business side, and that's the relationship between the advertiser and the seller and the programmer. Okay, there's going to be a value exchange there, and obviously there's willingness to make that happen. Then there's exchange between the seller who kind of took that money in, and with on one side with the tech vendors. And, like we said, that's kind of the easy part. And we work with Freewheel and Cadent and, a whole bunch of folks that are in the room. And in order for everyone to just work together on features and functionalities, and all boats rise the tide, especially here in Amsterdam, I guess, that works. And then there's, I think Justin might ask the question, or someone asked the question, then what's the value exchange between the seller who took the money in and the distributor, right? So there's a value there, and it seems like some folks, and I know in our case too, we kind of broken through that. So I do think there's scenarios where we've broken through every single one of those challenges, and there's great case studies there. Now it's just a matter of applying those learnings to the broader scale. So I think we've solved for a lot of it.
Yeah, and you mentioned, so Adam, you mentioned kind of getting in and kind of going above and beyond the basics. And what I would also kind of, sometimes I see, at the same time we kind of mention standards, right? Because at this point, the one question I always have on the addressable TV side is there scale? I mean, Jamie, you said 12.6 billion ads delivered on AdSmart. That's pretty awesome. So there's some scale. As you look in the Netherlands, as you look around, what do you need to do to get to that scale? Chris, you mentioned kind of coming in and getting to a common level of some commonalities across the platforms and all the players, and looking at that as opposed to trying to do too much too fast, to where what happens is then you end up slicing the campaigns down so small that they don't actually deliver any value or scale, or for you it's hard to measure and to be effective. I would say that's probably a challenge for the whole industry. So, Susan, on your side, as you guys are building out ad insertion, for example, you've just launched your new ad insertion products. You have all of these things in there. How do you bring? And you mentioned it was a challenge. How do you solve for getting commonality across all those platforms and getting that readily available so that you can sell it and measure effectiveness or do the things that you need to do that the advertisers are looking for?
Well, basically, the reason why we started up this process a year ago is because it's very difficult to do it with the competitors, and we just wanted to understand what was necessary to get dynamic ad insertion or addressable TV in place. And I think one thing is to work together with KPN, Ziggo, and on the broadcasters level, the competitors. Even with dynamic ad insertion, we worked with 7 parties on a very small platform to get this ready and done. So why is it so difficult? Because it's so difficult. I think I need to work with every one of all of these guys, with a lot of tech involved, with a lot of uncertainty, next to the fact that I need to work with partners who I work with and who I compete with. So this is my main challenge moving forward, getting this done. Before going to the commercial side. So we said, listen, RTL is going to sell it as a whole of brand daily, but that is not the least of my worries. The worry is I need to understand what it does to my broadcasting service, making sure, because this is on Fox Sports Go, so if I deliver not a seamless match experience on Feyenoord Ajax, you won't know what happened to our customer care, and then we're going to sell it. And I think it gives me a better perspective with the RFP that Harry is mentioning, to understand what is necessary. And even in the RFP, we experience that we need at least 8 to 15 parties being part of, let's say, the RFP to deliver the things we want to do. So I think that is what I've learned, and I'm not quite sure who we're going to tackle it, unless, like in Sky, you are a broadcaster, a sales house, and you have the technique in-house. So some points when I'm a bit down and I'm not so confident, I think the RFP is going to be a big challenge, although everyone in the room, to say that right, is very willing to get this done, but it will take a lot of stamina to get it done and trust. So I think it's about so many different, for us it's cost, for you it's price, it's scale, but most of all it's a lot of technique, which makes it difficult, even if you have GDPR just looking at you, what you're doing.
That doesn't make it easier for anybody.
No, not at all.
No. For the consumer.
Yeah.
So the I think so you go through all that process. We understand now how hard it is to get those things there. Tech is easy, but tech maybe is not easy when you really get down to actually executing across all of these. And then I think the question also comes down into measurement, right? So to measure effectiveness and to put those things in place, is it something that is very important to you? I mean, how is measurement? Because you've got GRPs, you've got the ability to track in-store purchases. You have all these different ways that you can go against measurement. What is it important, and how do you deliver it if you've got all of these different endpoints and you've got the combination of your linear, over-the-air TV and everything else that you're going to get to? Is that holding you back?
Yeah, I honestly believe measurement is key. And let's be honest, already in the upper funnel part, in the classical marketing metrics, we find it difficult to bring all these worlds together so we have a common denominator, single currency, whatever. And then when you talk about the lower funnel, the conversion part, which is straightforward, but ideally, of course, we want to operate full funnel and bring those two extremes, upper and lower funnel, together. And that's also the opportunity for broadcasters or publishers who are mainly in that upper funnel to be rewarded not only for that classical upper funnel metrics, but also what it does throughout the funnel. So attribution modeling will be a major unlock, but it's a double match. So it's agreeing on the common denominators and speak the same language with a measurement system in that upper funnel part, but also then finding ways to measure it all through that full funnel. And we have wonderful examples with retailers we partner with who are able to offer us the online metrics, but also the data on what happens in store. That's the ROPO model, researched offline and purchased, researched online, purchased offline. And then you see that campaigns we run with retailers, you believe has a lousy return on the investment, so quit with it. But then if you do full attribution modeling, you see it really drives sales offline, in store. And then you get a totally different conversation, and then you love to spend your money. So that's why I call it's a double match. So we're talking now as part of the RFP on agreeing on the upper funnel part, with publishers and broadcasters and whatever. But the next chapter needs to be how to enrich that from a full funnel approach. So we're not there yet.
So, I mean, when SPS presents and they show that those who are exposed to the targeted campaigns see a 33% lift, you need to see that data back in terms of sales. You need to see that data back. Part of that justifies the increase spend that you want to do because it's a return on ad spend. But at the same time, I don't know whether all, particularly across Europe and through all the different media and measurement companies that are out there, everyone has their own methodology and some are further along than others. Chris, on your side, you mentioned that you are doing just kind of measurement based on the impressions delivered to households. Does that break in any way the kind of reliance on a traditional kind of panel-based measurement company when you do that? And how do you position that with advertisers? Do they look at that?
When we started VOD in the States 8 years ago, one of the first things we did in order to have the viewed ad impression as currency, we figured we couldn't rely on Nielsen, we couldn't rely on ComScore. It's just something we had to do and do an investment on our own within our set-top box data. So in the States, there's something called the Media Ratings Council, the MRC. They are essentially the good housekeeping seal of approval. Yeah. Basically, that's why folks like Unilever and their agencies pay on to Nielsen, right? Nielsen has that stamp. Unfortunately, that takes about $1 million in 2 years to get that stamp of approval. But we went through that process, and that's how we managed to get the buy-in, so that we would basically walk into a room 6 years ago and go, okay, we have VOD, we're measuring our own thing, and everyone would go, oh, well, you know, can we count on your stuff? And I go, oh, we're MRC certified. And they go, oh, okay, here's the check. So that was a major part of it. So that's wonderful, but coming to now today, as the cable VOD starts to merge with more advanced targeting, starts to go with OTT and starts to play into this other thing, now there is discrepancies between our data and what folks like Moat or Double Verify or all these other digital systems, right? So now, as we're coming together, it's starting to raise up some other issues. So we've actually put a person in place, and his job all week is to actually work to proactively go on those discrepancies so that when they do come back to the seller and to the advertiser, that it is just one number, but that's actually risen its head, and it's a little complicated.
So we're almost up on time. You guys have been awesome, and I really appreciate kind of the thoughtful answers and discussions from everyone here. I think one of the things I would challenge you with is there is some kind of thought that advertising has kind of pushed people towards VOD services, SVOD services or similar. I know that Guy from Ampere this morning said maybe that's not necessarily the case. That you know, viewers were receptive to advertising. I would challenge you, as you look forward, if we can make this all addressable, do you think that changes either the quality of the way that we integrate the advertising into the actual viewer experience, or potentially the ad loads themselves? And I'll let kind of maybe each one of you close out on that.
Well, I think the Hulu example shows it all. I think, in particular, the older ages, we see the same thing as on Fox Sports, but I think the mixture of the hybrid model works perfectly well. In the Netherlands, we don't have that much commercials. And I think it's also not the reason why television or linear television is under pressure. That's not the case. I think it just depends on the strategy of the platform or the broadcasting methodology that you choose to. And it correlates with the price point that the consumer needs to pay, or the advertising that comes with it. And I think, no, that's not an issue. It's the content that drives subscription, and it's the model you choose with the subscription that decides how the money comes in.
He's nodding his head. Does that seem to be the consensus across? Same number of ads, just better targeted and better results for Harry and better revenues for broadcasters?
I think we live in a world where we're getting addressability in content anyway. It's about time that we had that in advertising. It kind of seems crazy that we don't have it, that we're still kind of talking about it. I think Spotify have got an interesting model about ad load. And I think allowing consumers to choose their ad load, is going to be something that we'll see. Nobody's mentioned the creative side of the industry as well. That's something that's got to move on now, to look at the way that we're consuming the content. And you've seen content be changed that way. I'd like to see the agencies and the creative side work with the industry, work with the tech vendors to figure out how they can use the technology to actually enhance the experience, not just on addressability, but to make the whole user journey better. And that's going to help with attribution as well, ultimately.
This is great.
Will you allow me just a final hope, I would say. Please, if we have to choose between models, let there be hybrid models. Because the biggest nightmare of an advertiser like us is being disconnected from consumers. You don't create brands in a factory or on the office. You have to get access to the minds and hearts of people. And we need you for that. And being disconnected is a nightmare. So a hybrid model would be great. Personally, I expect the volume of commercial messages to go down, but the relevance go up, which in the end should drive your yield on this. But to play this game, you need data and technology to make it happen.
This is great. So I think what we've determined is there's a willingness to collaborate, there's a willingness to pay the right prices, there's the technology people in the room. Come see all of these people and ask them questions. Yeah, this is great. We solved it. Thank you so much. Netherlands, I'm out. Appreciate it.